the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in, Friday, November 11th, wherever you are. It's the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I am joined, as always, by Matthew, my personal fantasy therapist, Betz.
Therapist, huh? Well, I am a physical therapist, but why am I your personal therapist?
Because I realized this. I called you on the way to work this morning, and I just said, you know what? When I want to just bounce an idea off of somebody, whether that's, it's a really in-depth DFS thought, or if it's something really stupid, you're the one. You're the person that I get to vent with, and tonight, we're recording this Thursday, I'm going to get to vent as much as I can about this Falcons game.
I can't wait. I really look forward to that phone call. For us, it'll be tomorrow. For the listeners, this morning on Friday, after what I'm sure was a riveting Falcons and Panthers matchup, which, by the way, I am a broken man after writing that up in the DFS Pass. It was just so painful. But Kyle, are we celebrating Marcus Mariota unders? Because that's in the DFS Pass. We took that. You'll know if that hit as of Friday morning. But as long as that hits, as long as Mariota doesn't throw for, I think it's 165 yards and 15 completions, I'll be a happy man on Friday morning.
I vented earlier, and I just need to say this again, because this game is conflicting for me. Because one, I love my Falcons, and what's not to love about this team? But I've always loved Terrace Marshall Jr., a.k.a. Lockjaw.
Of course.
Who, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you and I are getting some residual income just from that entering in on the main show. I mean, that's happened for a while. I feel like the other show, what's it called? The Footballers? It's a little podcast.
The Fantasy Pickleballers.
Yeah, well, those guys, Andy, Mike, and Jason, I know that they're still new to this whole podcasting thing, but yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, the DFS pod is really supplying most of the content for that show, right?
You're not wrong. And, the OGs, they know where Pity City came from. And this year we're keeping it rolling with the Snow Model, Lockjaw. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So yes, if Andy, Mike, and Jason would like some advice on how to podcast, just, let us know. And,
the wide receiver quarterback, swag model, dude, that's...
Oh my gosh, dude. I'm telling you, man, this week, it's going to happen again. I have a feeling, we don't really know because it's in Germany, but I have a feeling that Brady took the shirt with him. I don't know why I have a good feeling about that. I just do.
It's funny because I have legitimate people that will message me and say, I think you are copying the Footballers. I saw your logo. I saw what you're doing, and you're going to get in trouble with them. Or I think people don't realize what our jobs are. Do your family even know what you do?
Not a clue. Literally not a clue.
It helps that you and I are the one that do a lot of the show doc stuff. So if we throw in a good joke every once in a while, it lands in there. We are glad you are with us. We're going to be talking about the Week 10 main slate, talking about our cash picks, 3 games that we want to stack, and then giving our slate breakers, which, spoiler alert, new sponsor this week. I had to work the phones, the actual dial-up phones, and it's we got one.
I love it. I'm excited to hear who it is.
It's a big fish, actually. It's a big one. Then we'll talk about some props we like and get it in the mailbag. If you want to get all of our picks, we talk about the DFS Pass because it is our child. Betz and I both have 2 children, and some would say this is our third, that during football season, the DFS Pass is like another child that we attend to. The roster percentage report, when someone goes out, what do you do, Betz?
I drop everything, including my kids, and go in there and update it as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's what's important. So we're going to be monitoring injuries. You do that on the Injury Blitz podcast. That's for Special Foot Clan members only, but you update that. We update FanDuel, DraftKings, our roster percentage report, our picks over the weekend, including our best plays article, which has been pretty hot recently, I feel like. That chart that people get to see, I had someone last week that said, I've been waiting all morning for this, and now I'm not talking to anyone in my family for the next hour.
And that's what you're buying when you buy the DFS Pass. It's time away from your family, so good luck.
I wonder how the math actually works out when you tell your spouse or whoever, you say, well, I spent this money on the DFS Pass, but I made it back, but I didn't spend time with you, so did it work out? Like, For some people, maybe it is. But yes, you can get all of that at dfspass.com. Use the promo code DFSPod. And just a reminder, you and I go all the way through the Super Bowl. And in a couple of weeks, we'll tease the schedule next week. But dude, in a couple of weeks, we have our Thanksgiving DFS slate where we give a pod directly to Thanksgiving and those 3 games. So that should be fun, right?
That's my favorite slate of the year, every single year, and my favorite show to do, because there's nothing better than, the main slate sweat is great because you're there all day, you're seeing what's going on in the games. But now you combine it with family, with turkey, all these desserts, and football's on. You get to watch every single game in its entirety. So there's nothing better than that slate. We'll talk about that and the main slate that week. So it's going to be a very, very busy couple of weeks here coming up.
Yeah, we got some fun shows coming up. But for week 10, let's talk about our cash picks.
Straight cash, homie.
We're back talking about our cash picks. And on Tuesday, we talked about our salary standouts, some people that we thought you could put in your player pool. We're starting to narrow it down. And I know Friday and Saturday in our best plays article is really when we totally narrow down all of our favorite plays of the week. But at quarterback, we said there's 2 routes you can go. It's Patrick Mahomes at 7.9 on DraftKings or Justin Fields at 6.5. Are you still holding strong with our boy Justin Fields?
Yeah, I mean, if it was a same price sort of situation, I would play Mahomes 10 out of 10 times. But you save $1,400 by going down to Justin Fields, which on this slate for cash goes a very, very, very long way. There is a lot of running backs that I want to play, and so the salary is really needed. So to me, unless something crazy happens over the weekend, Justin Fields will be in my cash lineup, as I'm sure he will be for almost everyone. I don't think you get cute. You just play it. He's been the QB1 over the last month of the season, and since week 5, only Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes have more fantasy points among quarterbacks. The dude is 11th in the entire NFL, not quarterbacks, in the entire NFL in rushing yards. So now he gets a dream matchup against the Lions at home. He's going to run the football, we think. You get Chase Claypool another week into the offense. I mean, all the signs are pointing up for Justin Fields. So to me, he is the cash game quarterback this week.
I came on here to give a contrarian take because, that's me. I mean, the people listening at home like, oh, here's contrarian Kyle.
Coming in, Sam Ellinger for the win.
And yeah, the value is just too great. I'm saying that Fields is going to be in double ups, in single entries, 75%.
Probably, but I think it's fine, and I think you move on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that Kansas City game because I love Mahomes this week. If he was about $500 cheaper, I think I could fit him in my lineup. But at $7,900, you're paying up, especially if Josh Allen's going to be hurt. On FanDuel, I am prioritizing Patrick Mahomes. He is only $200 more than Justin Fields, so he's going to show up as our best projection. But yes, you don't have to get cute in cash. We can talk about when we profile that game. Let's make sure we talk about the case for fading Fields, or at least getting different in that game because you know how popular he's going to be. At running back this week, I have somebody that is locked in on a Thursday bets.
Oh.
I mean, they're just in my lineup, no matter what.
Who is it?
It's Alvin Kamara.
Oh, you mean the guy that didn't catch 4 passes for us on Monday Night Football?
He's going to redeem that.
I hope so.
That's what, the model also works. I don't know if you know this. All of our models are just very integrated, very in-depth.
Lots of spreadsheets.
But if they lose you money one week, they'll make it up the next week. That's what Justin Fields is doing for us after we lost a ton of money betting on him going to the 49ers a couple years ago.
I forgot about that. Oh, what a train wreck.
Yeah, but we got to count those, write those off, right? Business expenses.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara is just a lock in my lineup. He's too cheap, 7.4 against the Steelers, who have been a run funnel. I think Kamara or Olave are a priority for me in cash. I'm going to be playing one of those two, and right now, I lean Kamara.
Yeah, they're both. It's so tough to kind of pick and choose of those and say any negative things about them. I also lean Kamara just because, on a 10-gamer, I want to make sure I prioritize the correct running back plays. And to me, on DraftKings with full PPR, Alvin Kamara's 22% target share since Andy Dalton took over is really what I'm chasing. So I love Kamara this week. I'm with you. I don't know that I'm calling him a lock for me personally, just because I literally have 7 running backs on my list that I'm really trying to play. I'll start at the top just from pricing standpoint and kind of work my way down. Josh Jacobs, the Colts are doing whatever they're doing. Now they go across the country to play in Las Vegas. Vegas is a home favorite of 6 points. This just screams like Josh Jacobs type of game. 91% rush share to go along with an 11% target share is among the best usage in football. So to me, Josh Jacobs looks super clean if you can pay up for him. I like Kamara, like you said. We'll talk about Travis Etienne in the KC game stack. His usage has just been insane since James Robinson has gotten traded. He's 7.1K. The matchup is good. I do have some slight concerns for Cash about what happens if they fall behind against Mahomes, but on paper, it is a good matchup. And then I'll just tell people real quick, like my view on Ezekiel Elliott is I don't think he plays. And so I'm letting everyone know early in the week, if he is out, Tony Pollard for me is in. He is 6.5K. Green Bay is a run funnel. They are the definition of that. And then my favorite play this week, Kyle, is Dameon Pierce. Assuming he gets a full, bill of health. He was limited on Wednesday with the chest and shoulder issues, but he's coming out of the mini bye week last Thursday against my Eagles. Looked incredible. Now he has fresh legs, and the dude is seeing an insane amount of work. He is also 11th among running backs. I looked this up today in red zone touches, and the Houston Texans barely get to the red zone, which is so impressive because it's only because he's that good that gets them to the red zone. So he's getting a ton of work. He's 6.3K. The Giants are bottom 5 in explosive rush rate allowed, DVOA, and yards per carry to running back. So to me, Dameon Pierce at 6.3 is locked into my lineup.
Yes, I agree. We looked at some touchdown regression candidates, and he's kind of sneakily, him and Saquon both are kind of behind what you would expect based on the workload. I think I will be playing one of those two running backs. I won't be playing them together in cash, but Dameon Pierce is a lot cheaper, so I can't blame you for that. Is Saquon, though, too expensive for you?
I mean, it's one of those things every week. It feels like there's one guy on the slate that you're like, if you had the money to get to him, you can't poke any holes. Like, you should play him. And then to me, that this week is Saquon Barkley. 8.6 is a lot to pay for Barkley. It's certainly warranted. The matchup against Houston is perfect, as we see every week. It's just a matter of how do you want to build. There's 3 guys that I'd be more than comfortable playing in cash, whether it's Kamara, Etienne, and Pierce, or Kamara, Pollard if Zeke's out, and Pierce, or whoever you want to build. But you just have to ask yourself, is it worth the money to go up and get him? My lean right now is because I think the wide receiver slate, we'll talk about what's going on with the quarterbacks and how it affects the wide receivers, but I think the wide receiver slate is very weak this week. And so I really want to prioritize those 3 running backs. And if you play Saquon, it's not that you can't, it's tougher to fit the 3.
On FanDuel, right now I have Josh Jacobs as my cover boy for my FanDuel article. I think he's just just where his price is relative to the field is great. Pierce is great on there. Kamara is great on there. And then I just want to mention Deion Jackson. He's 5,500 on FanDuel. If I knew Jonathan Taylor was out, I would be more interested. And, but I think at the end of the day, do you think JT is coming back?
It's tough to say. I mean, I think he wants to play. This team clearly has zero intention of doing anything this year. So I think for their standpoint, it would be smart to not play him. But I do think eventually he'll come back.
What do you think the Colts vision board was like at the beginning of the year, where they were like, "Hey, we got Matt Ryan," and a lot of the hype
has changed.
A lot of the hype pieces, and I'm Falcons fan speaking here, but Matt Ryan is like a good leader. People respect him, and everything coming out of that camp was, "Hey, this is a different culture than Carson Wentz." But I was joking the other day. I was like, the only thing that Jonathan Taylor needs to succeed is Carson Wentz, and he's not here. I mean, that's what made him good. He supported the RB1.
Yeah, he was the reason. And, just sidebar real quick. Pity City. Let's pour one out, man. I mean, what a train wreck that was. Have him everywhere. Best ball redraft. Sweet t-shirts, though.
Who do you blame?
I don't even know. I don't even know. Everyone.
I blame the offensive line. I blame Paris Campbell just because he's in the line of fire. I just want to blame him.
Real quick though, on a serious note for Deion Jackson, I know the price is good. I'm not even considering him in cash. This Colts team is so broken. So broken. There is so much risk in playing Deion Jackson. I know the Raiders, yada yada. I'm not even looking his way in cash. That's my take on it.
You yada yada'd over the best part.
Yeah.
It was the Raiders. But I just needed to quote more of Seinfeld. Go to wide receiver, because you mentioned this earlier, and I agree with you. It's not a great slate for wide receivers. We'll talk about some of the matchups. We want to play Diggs, we want to play Jefferson, but that game is just going south, and it's really hard. So paying up at wide receiver, I think is not going to fit a ton of builds. Even Devontae Adams, like it's hard for me to fit them in my lineup when I can guarantee touches from those running backs. So you have Jalen Waddle. Is that the highest that you think you'll go in cash?
I think it depends on what kind of value we get as the weekend goes on, as far as, defense and as far as like punt wide receivers. Certainly, if anyone has more conviction and they feel they need to get Tyreek in their lineup, I mean, who am I to argue against the guy that's on pace to set the single season record for receiving yards? It's just that he's 9,100 and it's tougher to fit him in your builds if you go all the way up there. That said, he is an incredible play this week. But I've been saying, I feel like for every week, the last 3-4 weeks, like Waddle has been 85% as good, yet he just keeps getting overlooked by the field. And his price is much more easy to fit into your lineup at 7,600. So for me right now, the way that I've currently started building early in the week, that's the highest I'm going. Doesn't mean you can't go higher. But when you look at the guys that are above him as far as salary, you're talking about, like you said, Steph Diggs at 8,300. It's a great matchup. I'm just not sure if we can play him if there's no Josh Allen. I think Buffalo would change the way that they attack. Maybe they bring their pass rate down. They're more conservative, all those things. And then, along the same lines, like Matthew Stafford is in concussion protocol. Can you pay up for $9,000 Cooper Kupp with a backup quarterback in John Walford? I have no idea. Those are real concerns. So for me, I think the way I lean right now is to go balanced builds instead of paying up a wide receiver.
Yeah, it seems like my early runs with my lineup are going to have, 3 guys that are in that $5,000 range. There's a couple of $6,000 guys that we like. Amon-Ra, 6.9. We'll talk about him. It's a great matchup. It's against Chicago. Give me something more, buddy. Okay?
No comment.
I want a Lion. Or Lions and Bears are going to show up in a lot of lineups, I think, this week. People are going to play Amon-Ra.
What could go wrong?
I was thinking about the Paul Rudd, meme, like, look at us now. Like, who would have thought? Because we're talking about the Bears.
When I saw that.
We're talking about Bears and Lions is like the game of the week. So, that could only go south. But Amon-Ra's cheap. I think you can go there. I want to talk about Juju. I never thought I'd be here, but Juju at $6,000, knowing his role, he's $7,000 on FanDuel. I'm fine on both sites. Would you consider adding him?
I think so, especially if there's no Mecole Hardman. He didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. They're calling it an abdominal issue. Who the heck knows right now what that means? But if he's out, Mecole Hardman quietly has been really good for this offense over the last couple of weeks. He's not really seeing a ton of targets. 5, 4, 4, 9. He'll vacate some usage, but Juju has been good and consistent, and he is a part of this offense. They need him, and we know that Pat Mahomes wants to throw when they get in close, so it gives him better touchdown equity as well. So yeah, if Hardman is out, Juju at $6,000 looks pretty strong.
Like, let's say I'm not playing Mahomes and I'm not playing Kelsey in cash. He's the only other piece that you could pay up for the highest team implied total on the slate, right?
I think so, yeah. And they have a 30-point total, which is massive.
Yeah, so I like Juju. If I'm going a little cheaper, I mentioned Chris Olave. I said it's either Olave or Kamara. So Olave, he's awesome. I love him. Cheaper, what do you think about George Pickens at 5.5 or Zay Jones at 4.4?
Yeah, I kind of like Pickens this week. Chase Claypool was playing a ton for this team. I don't know how they're going to, fill in his void as far as usage and targets and snaps and that kind of thing. But I think it will mean more opportunity for George Pickens, who we know is talented. And, he gets the kind of post by rookie breakout that happens every year. Rookies come out of the bye, and later in the year, as the year goes on, they get better and better. And that's the case this week for George Pickens. So yeah, I think in the mid $5,000 range, he is totally a fine cash play.
Another cheapie that I've seen in our Discord channel is Donovan Peoples-Jones, DPJ. Very different than TMJ. It's different than PBJ or your boy RSJ.
Oh, there's a lot. Keep going.
ASJ, Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Oh, I forgot about him. There was a time in the dynasty circles where he was like the dude.
Yeah, no, he was cool coming out of Washington in college. But DPJ is only 4,300. The matchup's great against the Dolphins. The kind of targets he gets are kind of scary in cash. So is he one of those players, and we'll talk about the game, is he one of those players where you're like, okay, I'm only going to play him in GPPs because I could get like a 2 for 10 kind of game?
Yeah, I don't think he's on my cash radar this week. I hope we get better, punt options at wide receiver to fill that void. So again, keep him in your player pool. Let's see what happens. But yeah, for me right now, would look more his way in GPPs versus cash.
Yeah, he's definitely their wide receiver too. 87% of the snaps. He's the dude over David Bell, who we thought might overtake him. Didn't we auto draft DPJ?
We did in the second to last round of our big dog team.
Good thing that team is just cruising along, man.
Oh,
Our best
so
ball
good.
team.
We are going to be so rich.
Yeah. So I mentioned some with FanDuel. You can go that direction. Christian Kirk, I think, is totally fine as well at 6,800 on FanDuel. You can look that direction. But Chris Olave at 7,500 is right now in my lineup. And I think Tyreek Hill on FanDuel is fine at 9,000. He surpassed Cooper Kupp this week on DraftKings. It's like the
About
first
time.
time we've gotten a non-Cooper Kupp wide receiver one, like in terms of salary in like a year?
Probably, at least.
Yeah. All right. Tight end has become that much clearer since we started the show, which means I have to do the thing that I have to do.
Breaking news.
As someone who is not a doctor, I will let you give the update.
Oh, because this is very needed for this sort of news break. The Raiders are placing tight end Darren Waller on injured reserve, which is really sad because the dude hasn't played since like week 5 with the hamstring issue.
I know.
And remember, he missed like all of camp. And that was probably contract related, at least to some degree.
Right.
But they kept listing it as hamstring. The dude basically has not played this year and now will not play for at least 4 weeks. Very, very sad times for everyone that has him in redraft. But you know what that means? Foster Moreau season, baby.
It's another opportunity to get 4 points from Foster Moreau. And that is something I cannot pass up because it has not been good.
That's the life for me.
Have we both played in the last like 2 or 3 weeks?
I played him 3 weeks in a row.
And how are you doing with your life?
Great.
All right. So Foster Moreau, 3.2 against Indianapolis. You could do worse, but I think the thing people want us to talk about is Greg D. Greg Dulcich.
Brother.
He's the hotness. If people want to talk about something, it's Greg D. 3.4 against Tennessee. And that total, did you see where it dipped to?
I did not.
It is down to 36.5.
Great. What could go wrong?
36.5 is like,
Is
that's
that a
not even
record?
it's pretty low. I looked at like what this was for this year. It's the record for this year, but I wanted to start tracking games over the last 5 to 6 years because that is offensive. That isn't even JV level. Like, you are just like sticking kids out there who don't want to play football and they're in middle school and they just happen to do a PE class. Like, that's what we're working with here. Yeah,
that is insane.
Greg D. We're going to be punting though. That's really the option
Yes.
here. And maybe we'll give some other options, but I think the salary saver, get your points, get out of there. And then a defense we mentioned before on Tuesday, Minnesota, everyone's going to be playing them at 2.2, and the line's trending in a direction, right, where Josh Allen's probably out.
If you want to hit the drop again, you can, Kyle.
Are you serious?
Go.
Breaking news.
Bills quarterback Josh Allen was not seen practicing on Thursday during the media viewing portion of practice.
This is good podcasting. This is breaking news that people won't hear until tomorrow. We're pros. I mean, you and I are pros around here, and like we mentioned earlier, there's another little podcast that happens to share the same name as ours, the Fantasy Footballers, and they're doing great work over there. But not this kind of work, right?
No, not breaking news that will happen hours after the fact. But yes, Josh Allen, I've been saying all week, I don't think he plays. This is clearly trending in that direction. And for the redraft crowd out there, I would plan for a potential multi-week absence with Josh Allen. This injury is more serious than they're letting on for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Like, they're not just like, we got to win next week. So no Josh Allen this week, most likely. And so, yeah, the Vikings at 2.2 against Case Keenum in the revenge game of all revenge games. You can't really project them to do great because the Vikings D has not been that great. But if they give you 4, 5, 6 points at 2.2, you just take the salary savings and you move on.
I take the Vikings plus 3.5.
Is that really what it's down to, all the way to 3.5?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, it's in free fall. Yeah, I think that's probably right. I would take them as long as it's more than a field goal. That's what I would play.
We're not giving betting advice, people. I'm just kind of stating just what I want.
No, you should absolutely hammer the Bills. That's the advice because our takes are terrible.
All right, and then you could play the Cardinals if they get your boy John Wolford. I know you and him are close.
Me and John, we're boys, dude. Oh, so tight. Yeah, he should do great behind that offensive line for the Rams.
Yeah. What's funny is John Wolford's kind of like a fun, like he can run a little bit, but not behind this line. It's not going to happen at all. All right, let's take a quick break before we get into the breakdowns. So the slate this week we talked about on Tuesday feels kind of nerfed, like to the point of no Josh Allen. We don't know the status right now as of recording with Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford. Is it just shrinking? And is this another slate where it's like, all right, the chalk's probably going to hit?
See, I don't feel that way as much. I think there's going to be some chalk that ends up happening because of some of the injuries on the slate that is going to be more fragile chalk than other weeks. That's my hope anyway. When you look at kind of the trend of the last, month plus of the season where contrarian GPP players are just getting buried because the chalk goes nuts. It's not going to happen one of those weeks, and my general feeling right now on the slate is that there is a lot of volatility in these projections. So, yeah, let's get weird.
All right, let's do it.
Stack Attack.
First game we're going to highlight is the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are 9.5-point home favorites in Arrowhead, and the over-under is at 50.5. It's held steady there. This year, if you were to look at double-digit favorites, I'm just going to call Casey a double-digit favorite. 9.5, whatever. They've cleaned up, and on top of that, the double-digit underdogs. This is what they've done. So the teams like the Jaguars have averaged 15.5 points and only 142 passing yards per game. Is it okay that I have some worry about the Jaguars keeping up?
What would ever make you think that, Kyle, against the Jaguars against the Chiefs? I think that's a legit concern for sure. I mean, Kansas City, all things considered, Kansas City specifically in the last 2 years has kind of struggled with these massive spreads, but you're going on the road. It's a tough environment. Lawrence, I think, has taken a big step forward as far as a passer this year. No shocker with the coaching change, but he's still bottom 5 in, PFF grade when he's under pressure. And if KC can get after him, which they should be able to just pin their ears back and go, as 9.5-point underdogs, he should be throwing a ton, then, the bottom could fall out for the pass catchers there as well. So, yeah, I think the way you play this game, in my opinion, is that if you are going to play some Mahomes stacks, you want a Jaguar on the other side, because I think the way Pat Mahomes gets there is, they keep it closer than the spread suggests, and Pat Mahomes has to keep being very aggressive in the fourth quarter. So I do have some concern about the Jaguars. I like ETN for his role, like I said, for our cash picks. But as I said, there is some inherent risk in Jacksonville this week.
Yeah, the problem with ETN only is that he's going to be popular. I'm totally fine that this isn't a great matchup for him rushing the ball, but Kansas City's allowing the most running back receptions in the league. So you're hoping that he's in comeback mode, that you get kind of a higher ceiling. I love the wide receivers, though, on the Jaguars side. Like, I could play any three of those, and I would play Marvin Jones. Like, I would just do that in a heartbeat, because
nothing better than the snowflake in your lineup. Love it.
I know. That's the thing. Like, if your goal is to flush money down the toilet, you play Marvin Jones. That's what you do. He's a cardio king. Speaking of cardio kings, MVS, man. Did you see his targets per route run on Sunday night?
I mean, it had to be 4%?
No. What if I told you it was 1.8%?
Oh, boy. Yeah, that's rough.
Dude, that is the cardio king of all kings. Like, that might be the best thing I've ever seen in my life. That MVS was out on there, got a target, but it just didn't matter. So,
just running around.
I just telling his friends and family, guys, I was running around the field. These wide receivers, though, I think there's a combination here. If you're stacking Mahomes side, which is what I prefer, and if you're doing Kelsey, like, you can double stack Mahomes, and Juju's going to be the obvious. But if you find the other piece, if Hardman's out of the picture, but then you bring it back with the right Jaguars piece, I think they're going to be spread out between Kirk, Jones, and Marv Jones. I think they're going to be spread out enough where you can get some leverage because of how popular ETN is going to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, I think my lean obviously is to play Christian Kirk if I am going to play a bring back, on the opposition. Like, Zay Jones has been fine, but what is Zay Jones' ceiling game? Is it 6 for 75 and a touchdown, like best case scenario. So, he just hasn't really been getting it done from the upside standpoint that we look for. Since Doug Peterson, remember like a month ago, said like Christian Kirk needs to be that 10 plus target type of guy. He hasn't necessarily gotten to specifically 10 plus in every game, but he's been, 7, 9, 10, 11. He's been kind of up there. So for me, I really am going to X out Marv Jones. If he beats me, he beats me. Sorry, Kyle. I'm probably not going to play Zay Jones because in tournaments, I do think he'll be right now a relatively popular. I mean, he's not going to push 20%, but I think 15% is fair for Zay Jones as a bringback. Easy fade for me. So yeah, I think it's ETN or Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram is dealing with the back issue, and it's Evan Ingram. So to me, it's pretty clear. I have those two guys in my pool for this game stack, and beyond those two, that's it.
I'm going to commandeer this podcast right now. How dare you? How dare you X Marvin Jones Jr. out of your player pool just like that, like it was no big deal? What if I told you that who ranks first in the league in largest target share spikes when their quarterback is under pressure? It's Marvin Jones.
But does it matter?
Yeah, he's going to be under pressure a ton. Trevor Lawrence is. And throwing it deep is something that Kansas City actually does give up. Let's take out this past week because that Titans game was a JV game, right? In terms of Malik Willis throwing the ball. If you take that out of the equation, Kansas City ranks 32nd in opponent pass rate, 30th in passing yards per game allowed, and most importantly, 23rd in explosive pass rate allowed. There's a case for Marvin Jones.
Go ahead, man.
I'm not telling people to go overweight on Marvin Jones. Don't do that. Don't get fat for Marv. But what you do need to do is at least add him in your player pool in a large field and know that one of those three Jaguars receivers, I think that's what we're more saying, is one of those three guys will pay off in their salary. Jones at least has the deep targets, and I think Kirk is the better play. Zay Jones is like the cash play if you want to go that route. Any other thoughts? I know the Kansas City running game, we're kind of staying away. Jerick McKinnon saw a ton of targets last week in a season high in snaps, but I can't really copy and paste that for this week.
No, and it's really is just kind of game script dependent, and they're fine to mix into a large field tournament if you have strong conviction. But KC ranks number 1 in pass rate over expectation as a whole and number 1 in the red zone. So like the touchdown equity is not there, and you need touchdowns to win in tournaments. So for me, I'm not playing Kansas City running backs this week. As far as the other guys, we talked about Juju. I think he's a good play. If Mecole Hardman is out, you just talked about MVS. He has struggled everywhere to earn targets in his career. I would not expect MVS to be the kind of 1-to-1 replacement for Mecole Hardman. I would expect Kadarius Toney to get more playing time, who I think is interesting at 5K. GPP only for me, and that is only if Mecole Hardman is out.
Let me just state how much I love the Kelsey Mahomes stack in tournaments.
Oh, it's so good. Go ahead.
It's great. I looked this stat up, but as a stack this year, they've averaged 50 points a game. Like, that's pretty great. If you knew you could lock in 50 points right now, Betz, would you pay up for that?
I think I probably would. But it's tough to fit him in.
Oh, I agree. I'm not saying that, points per dollar, it works all the time, but they've averaged as a stack 50 points. And then even better, as a stack, they've 3x'd together, like meaning to take their salary, take their points. They've 3x 75% of the time this year.
Okay.
Who else has that?
I'm going to play at least one lineup that has Mahomes and Kelsey. And in the early runs, too, like Greg Dulcich and Moreau are the popular plays this week. And then you have Kelsey sitting at currently 9%. So
I love that.
Sign me up.
Yeah, for tournaments. And then on FanDuel, I just love their prices. So, consider that stack. Who do you like in this game?
I'm going to take the Chiefs. I know it seems like a square line, doesn't it? To lay 9.5 at home, but I'm going to do it.
What if you're like, I'm just going to take Chiefs money line here. I just really like
that is my pick, Chiefs money line.
Yeah. All right, next one. It's that game we talked about, the Detroit Lions at the Chicago Bears. What a world. It's a 48.5 over. Chicago is -3. And the last 2 weeks, Chicago has converted a league-high 70% of their red zone trips into touchdowns. That feels a bit high. And that was something I pointed out, remember, earlier in the year about the Lions. They were just super red hot in the red zone, and it kind of regressed a little bit. They had some injuries. The only problem with this game I need to point out is it could end up being just super slow and gross because we know what these teams want to do. They want to run the ball. Chicago ranks dead last in pass rate over expectation. And in the first half of games, They want to run the ball too. Second. And the same thing with Detroit. They want to run the ball. So are there routes where people love this game and it doesn't pay off?
I mean, absolutely. You talk about two teams that want to run the ball and play slow. That is recipe for disaster most weeks in DFS. Like I said, Justin Fields is a great cash game play. I do have some worry about him in tournaments, not because of him specifically, but the Lions, man. Like you said, they want to run the ball. They want to play slow. They are, I think, going to be successful running the ball here, but you can still get okay DFS performances from, let's say Fields and Mooney, and then you could play like Jamal Williams and it works out because they're okay. But like, I struggle to see this game reaching, 60 combined points, especially Jared Goff on the road. That said, Chicago's defense has not been what it was earlier in the year as far as pass defense. They've actually been quite awful, 28th in pass defense DVOA. So it does give some life to Amon-Ra St. Brown and those guys for upside. But we've seen it year after year after year with the Lions. Like, they have great games and they have games where you're just like, what just happened? So no one should be shocked if this game ends up, 21-17 or something like that. And these guys are okay for DFS, but not giving you GPP winning performances. So if the field is really heavily leaning into this game, which I understand why they would be, then it does make sense, I think, to get off the board a little bit and maybe go with a fade on this one.
Yeah, there's lots of routes where this thing fails. Like Justin Fields, I think we said it's our favorite cash game pick. There is a route where David Montgomery scores one on the ground, Khalil Herbert does another, and this game ends up, 24-17 or something. And you go, oh, I got one touchdown from Fields. He ran for 60 yards, but not a ceiling game that I needed for a tournament. Where you look at Mahomes and you go, okay, 300 yards is on the table. They have a 30 implied total. So just want to point that out. I do like both of the wide receivers for Chicago. Not a sentence I thought I would say. Darnell Mooney, the Lions are allowing the highest rate of 15-plus yard pass plays and 30th against fantasy wide receivers. And then Chase Claypool has entered the chat, dude. Did you see his involvement this past week? Because it didn't turn into a ton of production. He ran 16 routes, and he saw 6 targets. That's a 37.5 targets per route run number. So Chase Claypool's kind of sneaky in a tournament.
Kind of. And the last time that you said that, a couple years ago, he roasted my Eagles for 4 touchdowns, which accounts for basically 90% of his fantasy points since he entered the league. But still, the point remains that he has those multi-touchdown games in him. So, yeah, they're fine to mix in for sure. My only concern is that when the cash game, quote-unquote, the cash game quarterback goes into tournaments, people automatically stack them. So right now I'm seeing like Chase Claypool 1%, Darnell Mooney 7%. I would see those coming up probably by the weekend, maybe to 10 and 5%. So they're not going to go insanely into the roster percentage, but they will be, I think, a little more popular than maybe they normally would be.
Can you play one of those two and then just correlate with Amon-Ra or Jamal Williams on the other side and not play Fields?
I think you definitely could. And what you're saying in that scenario is like Fields is okay, but he's not incredible. And, Mooney gives you like 65 yards and a touchdown, which at 5,500 can pay it off. So I think that's totally fine. If you did want to do that and just kind of leave Fields off the table and only go with one pass catcher on either side, that's definitely in play as well.
Yeah, I could see either of those wide receivers hitting the 100-yard bonus. Fields, not really paying off, not 3Xing on his salary. Montgomery gets a touchdown or Herbert gets a touchdown. And you've gotten the piece you needed from the Bears side. So I'm interested in those wide receivers in tournaments. I think Dave Montgomery is a really interesting leverage point in tournaments if you want to play him there. But on the Lions side, I can't stack with Jared Goff this week. His home road splits have been super extreme. I get the matchup, but I don't think his ceiling can compare to Mahomes or Justin Fields. And if Goff is going to be pushed, I'm assuming Fields is having a good game. So I just don't think you can compare, but what do you like on the Lions side?
Yeah, I agree with you on Goff. I think he's fine, and I think that the matchup is good enough that maybe those home road splits are curbed a little bit. Chicago has been terrible in the last couple of weeks in every facet, not just the run, but also the pass. But like you said, is Jared Goff going to end up in a GPP winning performance? I'd be pretty surprised by that. So yes, I'm with you. I'm not going to play Goff stack specifically, but to me, it's very clear who you play in this game, and I only have 2 options. It's our guy Amon-Ra, who will be popular, so not necessarily the best tournament sort of leverage play. Not that you can't play him in tournaments, but he will be popular. Or I like Jamal Williams. If you say this game fails and it doesn't get there, and you just want to take Jamal Williams at 5,900 on DraftKings and move on, I'm okay with that. I mean, Chicago, we know, wants you to run the ball. Detroit wants to run the ball. Detroit's offensive line is awesome. They're successful running the ball, and Chicago can't stop the run. So it's a perfect setup. You still have DeAndre Swift, who's banged up. Dan Campbell has said Swift, they'll want to get him more work. Who knows, man? He kind of ping-pongs back and forth. He's had, 10 opportunities and 6 opportunities. So maybe he has 8 opportunities this week. I don't know. But that means Jamal Williams should still be in the range of 18 to 24 total opportunities. And he's second in the league in carries inside the 10-yard line. Second in the league in carries inside the 5-yard line. I played him last week and it didn't work out, but it's the same reason. It's a great matchup, and he's going to get goal line touches. So if Jamal Williams walks away with 85 yards and 2 scores at his price tag, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Now, I loved some Jay Willie this week on DraftKings, 5,900 on FanDuel. He's more expensive. So on FanDuel, he's not a priority for me in tournaments. Dude is averaging a touchdown per game. So I will take that no matter what. But yeah, the more I look at this game from a tournament perspective, I don't think I will be stacking it. I think I will just be looking at one-off pieces or just correlative pieces, because I can see a world where Williams gets a touchdown, Swift gets a touchdown, and then you're like, okay, did I really need to play either one? And then the same thing on the Bears side I mentioned. It could be totally spread out. So just know that there are multiple routes here if you don't want to go there. Give me your Vegas pick.
I'm going to stay hot with Justin Fields. I'm going to back the Bears, which is terrifying. -3.
I'm going to take the under. I think that's the sharper play, or as I like to call, it makes me feel smart when I call myself sharp. So I'll just take the under. I'll say this game.
I'll hammer the over. Let's go.
All right, last game. I think this one might be my favorite of the week. It's the Cleveland Browns at the Miami Dolphins. Miami is -4 at home, and the over-under is 49. These offenses are super efficient, and that's why we like them. Miami is first in 15-plus yard pass plays, 7th in pass rate over expectation, and the stat that just blew my mind, Tua is completing 64% of his passes, deep passes. That's the highest mark in a decade. So this dude's on fire. 2 of the best wide receivers in the game. Is it just Tua double stacks again? Is that what we're doing?
I mean, I would love to do that. If it was as easy as that every week, I think we should just keep doing it. When we had our best week for tournaments, that's what we did. And this week specifically, Tyreek Hill, I think, will get some popularity, as he will every week. It does not mean you can't play him. He has the highest ceiling of any wide receiver on the slate, in my opinion. Tua has been incredible. He is 6,700. Justin Fields is the cash game quarterback at 6,500. That sounds like an awesome price point pivot. In the early runs, I have him at 8.5% for Tua. Tyreek is going to be probably up at 20, but Jalen Waddle currently sitting there at 7%. So if you can get all 3 of those guys and you can make it work, the stack is just so clean because no one else gets the football. And Tua has been awesome. So you clearly can get it to his 2 playmakers, and he just goes off. It kind of reminds me of when Joe Burrow was going nuts down the stretch last year. It was so clean. You knew where the ball was going, and he was going to throw a ton. And that's what's happening with Tua, not reflected in his price, in my opinion. So I'm going to play, a handful of GPP lineups I do every week. I'll probably have 3-4 lineups that are centered around Tua double stacks.
Can you get different in this game knowing, hey, these are the 2 wide receivers you're stacking? Can you do a Tua, pick one of the wide receivers, and then pick one of the running backs? Or does that feel too thin based on the timeshare?
Yeah, it's tough. The matchup's incredible for the Dolphins running backs. It's just that it's so tough. Like last week in Jeff Wilson's first game, they pretty much split the rush share right down the middle. Both guys under 10% target share. They ran 13 and 12 routes respectively, with Wilson leading the way. So they're basically just 50-50. And it's okay, I think, at GPPs to take a shot on some of those guys and you just hope they get 2 touchdowns. But from a usage standpoint, it's really tough to go there. And it's not like they're cheap. 6,100 for Raheem Mostert is kind of a lot on DraftKings. And then Jeff Wilson, 5,500 isn't free either. So they're fine. The matchup's incredible. I don't have a strong lean on which one to go with. And because the Dolphins are so effective with throwing the football, I could see some big plays from Waddle, Tyreek, and then, the running backs are just kind of with a fine performance, but not GPP winning performance.
Cleveland says we want to play zone, and then you have 2 wide receivers who just eat it up. Just every single play, they're going to get to do whatever they want. So we can't say anything about Tyreek or Waddle you haven't heard yet. Gesicki is not really on my radar. Your boy Smythe is taking some snaps from him. But on the Cleveland side, this is a good offense too. They're 4th in total yards per game. Their offensive line is awesome, and we know they want to run the ball. So the field, do you feel like they're going to do Tua double stacks and then bring it back with Chubb? I mean, that's expensive.
I don't think so. I think Chubb gets overlooked. He always does on DraftKings because he doesn't catch passes, and everyone values that so much, which rightfully so. But Nick Chubb is not just another running back. Like, he hits the home run, not just every now and then, like very, very frequently. He's so good. And at 8,100, with Saquon on the slate and people wanting to play Kamara and Josh Jacobs, he will get overlooked. I have him right now at 3% in the roster percentage report. I'd be shocked if he gets above 5, 6, at most 7% by the time Lock gets here. So early in the week, Nick Chubb is one of my favorite GPP plays. Miami's not that good on run defense. They were early in the year, but since week 5, they're 27th in EPA per rush and 22nd in explosive rush rate allowed. What does Nick Chubb do? Rip off explosive runs. So I love Nick Chubb this week.
The wide receivers, I think, will get some steam. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Cooper is one of the hardest wide receivers to figure out. Like, when I'm writing him up this week, I'm like, okay, he is clearly the target leader on this team. Miami is a great defense to face. He's cooked Xavier Howard before, and yet his road splits are just terrible. So where do you lean on Amari Cooper and DPJ?
Yeah, we talked about DPJ a little bit already. Not too much to add there. Just he's fine to mix in this game stack. But for Amari, the home road splits for most people I feel like is kind of overlooked. Like, for him, they're so real, and they're very drastic. At home, he crushes. On the road, he's usually terrible. But if you're looking for ceiling, you're looking for that narrative to get flipped a little bit, I'm fine to go to Amari Cooper this week at 6,500 based off his usage, based off the matchup and all those things. And if we expect the Dolphins to have success here, which I do, then they're going to have to throw to keep up. So I think Amari Cooper is very much on the GP radar this week.
All right. Give me your Vegas pick.
Let's go with the over. I think over 49 points.
I think over is the sharp play. I kind of like Cleveland +4. I think I took them in our office pool just because you give me a little bit more than a field goal. I like it. But, yeah, we like the Miami side. We're going to be playing them nonstop. All right, before we get to our favorite props, we got to talk about our slate breakers this week, Betz. And I'm a little worried. This is a big sponsor for me, but you're a bit younger, Like, is this going to hit you at all? That's when I'm mostly worried. But this week, through long conversations with lots of high-ups, I mean, our HR department has been talking to them for weeks. But our sponsor this week is none other than Creepy Crawlers. No.
Didn't land.
Gosh. Didn't land. The people that know Easy Bake Oven, they definitely know Creepy Crawlers. I sent you a little, I sent you a picture just to show you, but basically, I mean, it was everything a kid could want. Instead of baking the goods that my sister did, I got to bake these little, little bugs and monsters things. They're a big deal. They even made a TV series out of this, Betz.
Oh man, look at this kid on the box. The bowl cut is unreal. That is Lloyd Christmas-esque.
Creepy Crawlers, I know I'm going to get some gifts in my timeline, but give me your slate breaker of the week.
All right, man. We just talked about this guy. I love Tyreek Hill. He is incredible. Do not get me wrong, but people are not playing Jalen Waddle enough. And right now I am seeing him currently around 6% in the roster percentage report. That feels like an incredible leverage play, or just as a stacking partner with Tyreek Hill and Tua, like we just talked about. I think Jalen Waddle goes off this week. You talked about the zone coverage thing for the Browns. They play it at about 70%. That is way too high against this team because Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, both top 4 in yards per route run against zone, and both top 5 in PFF grade against the zone. These guys are going to go ballistic. Give me Jalen Waddle at sub 10%. Are you kidding me? Yes, please.
I'm kind of afraid that if I don't have Waddle or Tyreek in my lineup, I'm just going to get buried. Like, for cash.
It's terrifying.
Yes. All right, so mine was somebody that you talked up last week, and I want to keep it rolling. Justin Jefferson, I think, and you can back me up, I'm just going to guess. I haven't looked at this yet. Roster percentage report, I'm assuming he is 4% or less because he is super expensive.
He is 5%, but could come down.
But can we change it, like manually change it to 4% because I said so?
Sure, just for you.
Okay. No one's going to be playing Justin Jefferson. This game is going south. People don't like the matchup. Kirk Cousins on the road. Iced out Kirk, by the way. Kirk with the drip. Yeah. people are going to be playing him. But from our studies and from Matt DeSorbo, one of our writers, we looked at matchups, and one of the ones that are most resistant to tough matchups are elite wide receivers when they play elite cornerbacks. The offense matters much more than the defense, and I would say that Buffalo is not bulletproof. Since week 5, they ranked 20th in schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. In week 1, don't forget, Cooper Kupp went off against this team, 13 for 128 and 1. Jalen Waddle, your boy, 4 for 102. Juju Smith-Schuster, your other boy, 5 for 113 and 1. Your other boy, Romeo Dobbs, 4 for 62.
I'm just best friends with everyone in the league.
Yeah, you're best friends with everybody. Even Russell Wilson. You guys are tight.
That's rad.
But Garrett Wilson last week, right? Looked great against Buffalo. 8 for 92. I am not scared off, and in tournaments, I don't think people will be paying up for him. So Justin Jefferson can break the slate any week, and when the field doesn't want to play him, I will gladly play him. So Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle are slate breakers of the week, presented by Creepy Crawlers.
Prop it like it's hot.
Our props are available in the DFS Pass. We get to update those. Betz has an article that goes live. He gets to alert everyone in the Discord channel. And why don't you just keep the train rolling with Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, we've talked about it enough. I think the matchup has already been established that it's incredible. We're going over 69.5 yards. It was 67.5 last week. It's just not moving enough. He should be up at 79.5, 80.5 yards. That's where I would put the line. So the books are not adjusting enough. He keeps hitting the over. He's hit this in every start with Tua except in week 1 where he had 69 yards. So that train that we had where that stat kept going where he just kept hitting it. Now I can say he hasn't hit this one in every start with Tua, but he's been absolutely crushing the number recently. Give me the over 69.5 Jalen Waddle. I found that on BetMGM and DraftKings.
What if I told you since this bet that I'm about to talk about was placed, I placed it personally, the line's already moved? Well, I mean, what does that tell you?
I mean, it means you put at least 1,000 on it.
Yeah, easily. Sam Ehlinger, your boy, quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, who are still figuring things out. His line for rushing yards.
It's a nice way to say it.
Yes. His line for rushing yards is, I took under 33.5 rushing yards. It was at minus 120. They've already moved the line down to 32.5. And I'm pretty sure this is the first time this has ever happened. But this is Sam Ehlinger's his third different offensive coordinator in his third career start. That is the most chaotic thing you could do for a quarterback just thrown in the middle of the season. Hey, by the way, let's change your offensive coordinator every single week to your boy Parks and Rec.
For the sake of the show and for him as well as a person, I hope he just goes, he's great. Parks and Rec just calls the best game ever. But this looks like an absolute train wreck on paper. So I don't hate taking any under on any Colt this week for obvious reasons.
I thought you were going to say something like, I just hope for his sake, like he survives. Like he physically survives this week, the NFL, because they literally think about having somebody that's in charge of a billion-dollar organization come in and say, hey, by the way, so what have you guys been doing? I mean, this is a substitute teacher saying, what have you guys been reading in your class? I don't know what we're doing. Let's just start all over right now. This is an NFL franchise.
That's such a good analogy because the students, as soon as you hear that, you're just like, oh, this period is over. We're not doing anything. And I feel like that's what's happening right now in the locker room.
Pity City's just like in the back of the class, just like this. I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm gonna find something. I mean, that's the best part about Pity City is we can relocate it to somewhere else.
That's right. I got one more before we move on for the prop, by the way.
Go for it.
Darnell Mooney, 43 yards. Can we get that? Let's check the game logs, Kyle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row. And now you get a matchup against the Lions, who are terrible in the secondary. Over 42.5 yards for Darnell Mooney at minus 130.
All right. So like I said, you can get all those props in the DFS Pass, but let's finish off with some mailbag questions.
Mailbag.
The best place to get your questions answered is on Discord, where the people are just chatting. They're talking about life. They're comparing lineups. I mean, the easiest thing you could do in Discord is just say, what do you guys think about this cash lineup? And I see people all the time say, hey, that's a little thin, or hey, you have 2 punt plays. I wouldn't do that. Or man, you have 3 Jaguars. I wouldn't do that. So go to the Discord channel, You can get that if you have the DFS Pass or a member at jointhefoot.com. This first question is from Twitter, from The Real D Millie. Is Diggs a safe cash play without Allen? Likewise, can you play Singletary without Allen?
We already talked about the Josh Allen thing a little bit. I don't think I'm going there with Diggs in cash. Certainly, if you wanted to talk me into a GPP play, though, correlated with Justin Jefferson or something like that, that looks great because I think the field will be a little scared for obvious reasons. And I do think Buffalo will change how they play. With Josh Allen, they just throw. With Case Keenum, do they give you a little bit more Devin Singletary and the running back committee that they have? Probably. So I'm out on Diggs for cash, especially on FanDuel where he's 9,100, not even considering that. But Singletary on both sites is 5,600, an incredible value on FanDuel. And we know, just based off his usage, his game logs, looking at when he plays the most snaps, it's when those games are very, very close. And if that spread keeps coming down to, you said 3.5, where it opened at, I think, 7.5 or 6.5, then if the game stays close, Devin Singletary should be out there a ton. So I don't hate him this week. The matchup is really tough. Minnesota is a pass funnel. They're very good in run defense. So he's not necessarily a smash play, but it's hard to argue that price, especially on FanDuel.
Singletary is one of those players where you look at the price and you're like, oh, that is so tempting on FanDuel. That is so tempting, but can he compete with the other running backs? That's what you have to ask. Like, can Devin Singletary in a half-point format hit 20 points?
He's done it before.
I'm saying, like, what are the odds, though?
I would put it at 30%.
Okay, I was a little lower. I was like at 20, 25. But, yeah. It works if we've seen him go on a run, right? Last year, like that into the season stretch and into the playoffs. Like he can do that. He just needs the touchdowns. Next question on Discord is from TD Westlow. Every week, it seems like most of the field is on a similar cash lineup. Cashing comes down to one key decision. I would totally agree. He said, do you expect that to continue? Is the field just getting sharp? And I'll start off by saying, yes, the field is much sharper than what it was years ago. Years ago, you could also get away with some really extreme punt plays, like quarterbacks that were way too cheap, or like, you'd have running backs that were like sub 3K, and they've changed all the prices from what it was years ago. But I have people all the time that said, how did this person have the same lineup as me? How did they get duplicated? Well, the field gets narrowed, like who your players are, gets narrowed when you start going through your lineup. Like, okay, well, I'm probably going to play Fields. All right, well, then I'll probably play 3 running backs. And most people have 5 or 6 running backs they like. I'll probably punt at tight end. I guess I'll play the Vikings. Like, it actually is pretty condensed when you think about it, and don't just think about your own lineup and think about what everyone else is doing, where it's not crazy to see your lineup duplicated in head-to-heads especially. So keep that in mind. Do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think you said it perfectly. And I agree the field is definitely getting sharper. There's more, I think generally, there's better content around DFS in the industry. That's not the case 5-6 years ago. It's very popular now. So you're seeing a lot of those kind of content pieces come out about the best plays and that sort of thing. So I do think the edge in cash is less than it was even 2-3 years ago. And as a result, it doesn't, if that's not your preference and you are losing in cash because it is turning into a 2v2 every week, it's okay to look in the mirror and say, like, listen, like the edge for me is not there. I'm moving on. I don't think that's crazy for some people, but I agree the field is definitely getting sharper.
You and I look around the industry. It's not like we just live in our own little footballer's hole and not talk to anyone else. Like we have friends around the industry that are sharp, that have really smart minds. And yes, like think about so many people are entering a cash lineup and they haven't listened to a podcast. They maybe only play redraft, or they haven't taken any time to see what the best roster construction is. Like I have some friends back home that sometimes play DFS, and the end of their lineup, it's like they have 2 punt plays and one of them's like Paris Campbell, and like they flex the tight end. So like they're already behind the 8 ball based on construction. So if you're listening to this podcast, if you have the picks, I think you can get a leg up on the competition. It's not crazy to have a duplicated lineup though.
No, and you should expect it.
Yep. All right, next question from Big Easy on Discord. I build my lineups by hand and I have never used a lineup generator. What are the pros and what are the cons, Betz?
Welcome to the hand building team of Borg Betz. Yeah, I'm not a lineup generator guy, just never have been. And part of the reason for me is the cons is that generally it will force you or it wants you to play certain players that fit roster constructions the best way. And so when you're playing in these kind of MME contests that are 20 max or 150, you'll tend to see very similar lineup constructions around certain players. So you have to go in, you have to manually adjust the lineup generator and tell it what to do. And it takes a lot of time. It takes time to do that. That said, if you do want to play 150 lineups, the advantage of using one of those is that it saves you a ton of time, obviously. But for me, the reason I hand build is because I can force in what sort of constructions I want. Where the computer wants me to play Justin Fields no matter what, I want to get different and I want to pay up for quarterback or go down in a different position or whatever. So I like to hand build. For me, that's kind of my preference. But the obvious advantage of using a lineup generator or an optimizer is that it saves you time to build multiple lineups. With
an optimizer or a generator, whichever you want to call it, you have to make sure that you know what it actually is trying to do, what it's trying to accomplish. And if you don't go through and have the right settings, like if you don't change the exposure rates, it's going to keep forcing the same player. Like Greg Dulcich is going to show up in every single lineup, Foster Moreau, because it's taking what the optimal points per dollar projection is. And it's taking, players like Saquon or this week it'll probably do Dameon Pierce is going to show up a ton. And It's going to keep forcing those players in your lineup. But if you put an exposure rate and say, if I'm playing in a tournament, I only want 25% of my lineups to have Dameon Pierce, you can do that. I tell people use our roster percentage report or the roster percentage projections that are actually in the lineup generator by RotoWire and kind of adjust hey, I want to be over the field. If 30% of the field is Travis Etienne, I want to do this, or I want to go against that, whatever you need to do, but you have to adjust the optimizer. I use the optimizer on a Wednesday or Thursday to tell me, here's what the field generally wants to do. And Zay Jones and Brandon Cooks always show up in those generators because they're about the same prices. They always project the same. So you and I like the process, though, of going back and forth and building our lineups, but we still look at projections, right? We're not just building our lineups by hand and saying, oh, well, cool, this looks good. We're actually comparing what we think ETN's doing. Or last week, I thought Ken Walker was just as good a play, and some would say he's 1 point better than ETN, they would say.
Yeah. Yep. And again, projections matter a ton, but they're only a piece of the puzzle, right? And so if you just run projections blindly without thinking about context, that's where you can get in trouble with an optimizer.
I also see a lot of people that get mad when we say ETN instead of Etienne. I get it. I took French for 8 years. I get that it's
I'm never going to change the way I say it, just so everyone knows.
Man, now I realize that I have pretty good hold of French vernacular and the way that things are pronounced. Etienne. All right, maybe Etienne. I'll go there. But I see people get mad about the pronunciation all the time. Hey, we talk about stupid football for a living. We talk about players named Lockjaw. We could mispronounce things all the time. It's fine. All right.
Truth.
Couple more questions. One from DFS Isaac. Who is the Joe Mixon of Week 10? And I like this comment. He says, I'm asking so I can make sure I play him in 0 spots like I did last week.
Thumbs up emoji as well to go with that. That was good. So when I looked at this question, I thought to myself, well, it can't be the most obvious, top tier play because you could say Derrick Henry, you could say Saquon in a beautiful matchup. Joe Mixon was 6,500, so he fit a lot of lineup constructions. He was popular, but not insanely popular. So he's one of the best 5-6 running back plays on the slate. When I look at this, I see Dameon Pierce at 6,300, and we just talked about at the top of the show, he is a screaming positive regression candidate for touchdowns. I think Dameon Pierce is a great play this week.
I think Dameon Pierce is a great play as well. I think Saquon's due for some touchdowns. He's behind. Kamara's still behind on touchdowns. We saw 3 touchdowns a couple weeks ago, but I think Kamara could still explode. There are some other players that are they're waiting. Singletary's due for a ton of touchdowns. And if Allen's out, I could see him getting a couple of goal line looks that usually went to Allen. I wish I knew the answer, but why didn't you bet Joe Mixon last week?
Don't ask. I'm still upset about it. I don't know.
Free money. Especially, I can't believe you didn't bet the 5 touchdown prop.
That we would have retired if that was the case.
If you got 5 touchdowns and you bet on it, you are set for a while. Last one from Luke_chill17. How much do you prioritize having late swap ability, and how many players should you look to have in the late game? Sometimes I galaxy brain after making a lineup with few or no late games and feel tilted. I'll say for me, it's like a tiebreaker. So I think Etienne and Kenneth Walker were pretty close. You went with Etienne and I went with Walker, but I liked having the flexibility of Walker in that late game last week. It was just a little bit extra for me, but also I wanted to get different. But I don't know. I wouldn't say you need to force it. You just need to look at the slate and look at those. This week it's 3 games and say which one looks better.
Yeah, and it really does depend on like how many options do you have in the late window? How many games are there? Like some games there's 2 games, some weeks there's 2 games. This week we got 3. And then you ask yourself, like, if you're swapping and just trying to set your lineup only so you can swap, are you sacrificing good plays to do that? Like one of those 6 teams in the late window this week are the Colts. Like that, they're off the board. You can't really swap to them. Dallas and Green Bay. Green Bay's offense is terrible. They have a low total. Like, all right, what are you getting? I'm not saying don't do it if you're behind. I'm just saying to plan ahead for that is probably a mistake in this specific context, especially when you consider, I think it's going to be John Walford for the Rams and maybe Kyler Murray banged up or not playing for the Cardinals. So this slate specifically, if my lineup fits it, go for it. I'm not prioritizing that this week specifically.
Yeah, for instance, like if Zeke is missing this week and Tony Pollard is your flex, you're probably playing him, but it does give you a late swap option if you're flexing him in that spot to go, okay, if I'm really far behind, I need Pollard to fail. But the reality is if you're just right there, just ride the wave with the rest of the people that are playing Tony Pollard, there's not going to be a lot of chalky pieces this week in the afternoon window, right?
No, I just think looking at those teams right now, Josh Jacobs, if Zeke's ruled out, then Tony Pollard, and I actually kind of hope Zeke ends up being like a game time decision and people can't play him in the late window. That is a specific play that I would prioritize around this week if Zeke is a game time decision is Tony Pollard.
If you want to play with us, you can go to ballersdfs.com. I had to physically show someone how to type that in, click on the link, and then, here's the crazy part, enter a contest. That's what people need to learn. It was Papa Josh. It was Papa Josh.
I knew it was. I was going to say it probably was Josh.
So it was our community manager. But yes, go to ballersdfs.com. We get to open wonderful contests, including this past Monday. We had some listeners and people that joined us on Discord win some awesome cash. We have a 600-person contest every single week that's live right now. And we're just waiting for people to go in, steal our money every single week. We're all about it. So good times, great oldies. It's really fun. Betz, why don't you sign us off? A great episode, by the way. Great job.
I had a ton of fun today. Hopefully you guys did too. We have a fun slate this weekend. Go win some money, win something big, and when you do, let us know. We'll be back next week. Good luck in week 10.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com.